Today I'm going to talk about Ecorche, which is a classic anatomy study. And but before I do, let me explain a little bit about who I am and what these classes are. So I teach drawing fundamentals both online and at an animation school, and I like to do these online classes because this is more similar to real life classes than what I'm able to do online. Besides working with people one on one. It's more similar than YouTube videos where it's just information going one way. It's just talk, and then on YouTube you also have to like get to your points really quickly. There's not a lot of room for nuance because people click off and they get bored. So these courses or these free classes, they give me the chance to take my time and expand on the points I'm making and interact with people. Hello from the Netherlands. YouTube looks and sounds good. Thank you. So yeah, if you want to interact with this, I really encourage you. I want this to be a dialogue, not just me talking and demoing. So in real life, I have social cues. I can see people's faces, so I know when it's time to stop talking, let other people talk. But online, I don't have those. So if you want to talk, just talk. Don't worry about being rude or interrupting me. If you would rather not speak into the mic, or if you're on YouTube, you can type into the chat and I will read it there and respond. So, écorché is it's a French term that means flayed or without skin. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a figure drawing, but I'm not going to draw the surface details. I'm going to analyze the anatomy based on what I see in the model. And I'm going to use my anatomical knowledge for this. So, this is not a beginner exercise. I want to be clear about that. This is intermediate, at least. This is for artists who can already draw what they see with pretty good accuracy. Ideally, you can also do some basic perspective and invent forms from your mind. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting these fundamentals and trying to do the anatomy at the same time, and it's going to be pretty difficult. When I do these, I can rely on my anatomical knowledge because I've studied this stuff a lot, but I know that when you're learning, you don't have all the stuff memorized yet. So what I'm going to do is when I'm drawing stuff, I'm going to be referencing my book, which you can download for free at the link in the description and on the Discord channel, or sorry, on the Discord server. And I'm going to use that to show the information that I'm referencing. So I have three photos of the same model. These are from Graffiti Studio. They have very good reference material. And I'm gonna start. Whoops. I'm gonna start with this one, and if I have time, I'll do another one, but I doubt I will. These can take a bit, especially if I'm going to slow down to show the information that I'm referencing. So again, if you have any questions or any thoughts, please feel free to just jump in and say them because I'm just going to go ahead and draw. And I might not talk as much for this part. But what I do is I start with a gesture drawing. Like a little bit of a slower gesture as I want to get the accuracy of the overall forms and stuff. I want to have the proportions down when I start thinking about anatomy so I don't have to think about anatomy and proportion at the same time. Like I'm going to be getting into a bunch of little details. I don't want to have to also think about the whole at this as I'm doing that. gonna run out of room. Still gonna run out of room. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. It's just to get the proportions down, the overall shapes, so I don't have to worry about that while I'm focusing on the anatomy. I will knock that down a bit. And now what I'm going to do, when I do Ecorche, I start with the skeleton and then I attach the muscles to the skeleton. And the reason I do that is because um, the skeleton is, to me, the more important part about learning anatomy. It seems like the muscles are because those are the ones on the surface and they're cool looking. So everybody goes right for muscles, but it's the skeleton that actually gives the figure its forms. And the muscles are just attached to that. And I learned where muscles attach on the skeleton. So if I can draw the skeleton, I can place the muscles with a level of understanding that I can't if I'm just thinking about the muscles and not the skeleton. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find what are called bone landmarks, which is where the bone is close to the surface. So you can see this here and this here. There's a flat area on the chest and then these hard shapes on the top of the chest, the top of the torso. Those are the clavicles and the sternum. So these are the clavicles and that's the sternum. And drawing that helps me place the rest of the bones of the torso. So there's the sternum. And I'm starting out kind of rough. I can refine it later. And the clavicle. And I can see that the clavicle's kind of going behind, like the front of the clavicle's here, the rest of it is going behind it. And now the sternum is in the middle of the rib cage. So knowing where that is helps me find the rest of the rib cage. So that is, can't see it exactly, but it's somewhere like this. So the sternum is here. Rib cage is something like that. So this is a combination of finding the stuff I recognize on the surface and then just knowing the forms of the anatomical structures that I'm drawing. So there's the rib cage. Let's do the skull next, because the skull is usually easier to spot if you know what you're looking for, like the um, eye sockets, cheekbones, nose bone, all that good stuff, and the jaw. It's all stuff that you can see pretty easily on the surface. So again, it's a combination of what I see and what I know to be there. I think I made the nose a little bit big. And I'm not going to draw the individual teeth because that's a pain. And they're small. And then I know the cervical spine is going to come up here. Okay, so let's find the pelvis, which is a little bit harder on this model because he's wearing briefs. Ideally, this would be from a nude, but if I do that, it's not going on YouTube. So I believe the iliac spine is here. You can see this little, little landmark, which is actually usually a lot easier to see in real life, but it's like right here. There's a little bump. And then there's these lines here, which are actually tendons, but they'll tell you where, because they go to that point on the bone, they'll tell you where it is. And the iliac crests are these right here. And the bone landmark here, the anterior superior iliac spine, ASIS, that's that bump that I'm finding. And then I also want to find the pubic symphysis, which is this structure right here where the two sides come together. And all of this stuff is included in more detail in the rest of the book. So I'm just using that skeleton to make it easier, but this is all here, where the ASIS points are, where these landmarks are, all that stuff. And I'm not going to actually be able to see that at the surface, but what I do see is the center line. So the sternum, the line between the abs, and I know that the pubic symphysis is on that center line. So if I follow that center line in space, that's going to show me where the pubic symphysis is. I can also find the hip joint. The acetabulum is the hole that the head of the femur goes in by finding the femur there and there. So now I'll go ahead and draw that. So those are the points that I could see or find in the model. And from there, I'll just draw the rest based on what I know the pelvis looks like from having studied it. If I didn't have this knowledge, I would be using either the pictures in that book that I showed you or a 3D model or both. And then the lumbar spine attaches the pelvis to the rib cage, and the thoracic attaches to the rib cage. And then the trochanter of the femur that attaches to the head of the femur. Like so. That's this structure right here. You can see how it sticks out and muscles of the hips attached to that. And then let's keep going with the legs. So the femur is here under a bunch of muscles. I can't really see it, but what I can see is the knee joint. So there's kind of like these two cylinders, and the patella is a little bone that defines the kneecap. And then there's this kind of like triangular shaped top of the tibia. So here, I'll go to the femur. These pictures are kind of small. So here is that like cylinder kind of thing, the condyles of the femur. Here's the head of the tibia, that triangular part, and the patella. So I've identified all that stuff. And now I'll draw it. And then these connect with the shaft of the femur, which is curved a little bit. Looks a little short. I think the proportions are wrong. I'm gonna, yeah. Let's make that a little bit bigger. And then there's the tibia, the head of the tibia. And the next structure I'm going to identify is the ankle on the lower leg. So the tibia is the main bone of the lower leg, and then it has a bulge on the inside. And then the fibula is the smaller bone of the leg, which has a bulge on the outside. These are called malleoli. A malleolus is the singular, and the one on the inside is the lateral. The one on the outside, or sorry, the one on the inside is medial. The one on the outside is lateral. So if I look at my model, I have the lateral malleolus here. You can kind of see the medial one, and then here I can see the medial one pretty clearly. Kind of the limit of working with photos is can't see, like if I was in real life, I'd be able to see that a lot clearer. And you can actually see a lot of the shaft of the tibia here as well, where it's close to the surface. So I'll go in and I'll draw those as well. actually, I gotta put this a little bit lower because I changed the proportion since my gesture. Hopefully, I don't run out of room again. So there's the fibula as it attaches to the side at the top of the tibia. And there should be a little bit of space between the two of them. With that on this side, I wouldn't see the fibula. It's on the other side being hidden by the rest of the tibia. Which leaves us to feet, which I think are the least interesting part of the body. So we got these little ankle bones and the ball of the foot. And I'm going to mostly simplify these. This one is worth knowing a little bit about. This is the, I'm going to brain fart here, the talus. Yeah. And that's the bone that articulates with the lower leg and it articulates with the heel. So it can go forward and back and it can go side to side, which is how your ankles move. It's a little more complicated than that in life, but I'm not doing a full anatomy lecture here. So I'll draw in the talus. Has a little curve on the bottom to fit over the heel, which is here. And then the tarsus is, I think, 5 bones, but you can't see them individually, so I don't bother studying them. And then the metatarsals are the long bones of the foot, and then the phalanges are toe bones. And I'm not going to put that much effort into the toes. I don't really care that much about feet, if I'm being honest. At least not the details. I want to get the overall structure of the foot right, but the details are whatever. So there's the talus. Calcaneus is the ankle bone that it fits on top of. Then the tarsus. And get that shape in there that the metatarsals create. And the toes. I'm not going to do the individual toe bones. We only have an hour. It's not worth it. So that's the legs. And I guess now I can finish the part of the hip that I left. So on to the arms. The arms connect to the scapula. And there's this little part called the acromion process that attaches to the outside of the clavicle. Then this is called the glenoid fossa. It's this little cup on the outside of the shoulder that holds the humerus in place. And from this angle, I don't think I see any more of the scapula. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Shoulder girdle. So right here, this is the acromion process. There's the glenoid fossa. You can see how it attaches to the clavicle and then floats on the rib cage. And the humerus has a round head that fits into the glenoid fossa. And then it has 2 condyles. That's the word. at the other end. And you can't see the inside of the shoulder joint. That's all covered by muscle. Actually, I think this would be a little bit further in. But you can sometimes see the condyles. So actually, you can pretty often see the condyles. There's one, and there's one there, and one there. I know these bumps don't look like much, but when you studied it a lot, you start to notice these things. So, bones of the arm. So this is that rounded head, and these are the condyles. And the condyles are important because they form the outsides of the elbow. And then attaching to the condyles are the radius and ulna, the bones of the lower arm. So you can see that the ulna, it wraps around the humerus, and then it's straight. And you can see a lot of this at the surface. So right here is the olecranon. That's the part that wraps around. And then you can kind of see the straight line right there. And I can't see it on the other side, but I know where it is. So I'll still be able to draw it. So there's the olecranon wrapping around the condyle and the straight shaft of the bone. Like that. And in this case, it's going to be mostly behind the radius, which is the other bone, of the lower arm. So the radius, you can't see much of it at the elbow, but you can see more of it at the rib, or at the wrist and closer to the wrist. That's this flat area here. It's where, right here, where the wrist attaches. And I can see that right here and right here. So that's going to be something like that. And one important thing to note about the radius is its attachment is rounded, so it actually rolls over the humerus. So you can see it's rotated a little bit. I'll get my hand on camera. The arm in the model is rotated like this, as opposed to just being straight. So as it turns, the radius is turning over the ulna. And then the carpus is the equivalent of the tarsus of the hand. It's a block of bones. There's a bunch of them. And you don't see them at the surface, so I don't study them. Then the knuckles reveal the metacarpals. Which attach to the carpus, and then the phalanges are the finger bones. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those either because there's a lot of little detail and we're drawing at a bigger scale. And I want to make sure I have time for muscles as well. Metacarpals, phalanges, metacarpal phalanges. And yeah, I could be doing more detail on these too, but that's not the point of this exercise. Like, I want to be able to identify the structures rather than do perfect drawings of them. Though I guess there probably is some value in taking the time to really clean these up and study the forms of the bone specifically, but we only have an hour. And I want to make sure we have time for muscles. Oops. So there it is. There's the skeleton. So now let's pop some muscles on this bad boy. I'm going to lower the opacity of the skeleton just a bit so they're not competing. But I'll also use like a dark red for muscles. And I started with the chest, so let's start with the chest again. And I will pull up my muscle diagram. So I'm going to start with this guy right here, the deltoid. And the deltoid, when you're studying muscles, I recommend studying their form, but also their attachments. Because like I said before, when you know the attachments and you know the skeleton, you know where to place the model, or you know where to place the muscles. This is really useful, especially when you're drawing from imagination. So you're inventing the skeleton and inventing the muscles instead of seeing their forms. So the deltoid attaches to the scapular spine, which we won't see from this angle. The acromion process, that's the part at the end of the scapula that I talked about, and the clavicle, and then it attaches to the humerus here. And you can see that right here. That's this bulge. So there's where it's attaching. To the scapula. And, or sorry, to the clavicle, and the scapula one is a little bit further back. Okay, so I need a new layer for that, and then attach to the clavicle. And the humerus. And then attaching to the acromion process. And I think it's actually a little bit further over this way. And then same thing on the other side, but we only see where it attaches to the clavicle. So next we're going to do the pectoralis, which is the big chest muscle. And this attaches to a bunch of places. It attaches to the clavicle, the sternum, the costal cartilage, which is the rib cage, and then to the humerus. So all on this area, and then to the humerus on the other side. And you can see that here. So there's where it attaches to the sternum, there's where it attaches to the clavicle, there's where it attaches to the ribs, and then it goes here to attach to the humerus. I think I made the sternum a little bit long here, but whatever, we're going with it. And it gets thicker as it gets away from the body. Especially this dude looks like he's been lifting, so you can give him a little thickness on that pectoral. And now for the neck, the sternocleidomastoids are these guys here that attach the clavicle and the sternum to the back of the head. at the um, coracoid process. I can't remember exactly the name off the top of my head, but you can see these really clearly. That's this muscle right here, and then it splits, and there's a little head for it there as well. And you can kind of see the other one. Draw that in there. And the other one is here. And then this shape here is called the muscular triangle. It connects the uh, hyoid, yeah, that's that little bone there, and the thyroid, which is the voice box. And there's a whole bunch of little muscles, which I have studied, but I honestly don't remember because they're not useful. Um, because at the surface, it's just a triangle. So keep it at the triangle. And then this muscle here is the trapezius, which is a big muscle on the back. But from the front, you can see it as well because it connects the clavicle and the acromion process to the skull and to the spine. So I'm not going to get into all of the stuff about it on the back, but I'll just draw it. We're attached to the clavicle and the acromion process. And then up to the spine. The other little muscles of the neck, I don't think they're worth getting into. You can barely see them. At this rate, we are not going to finish, so maybe I'll have to do a separate one of these for arms and legs or something sometime. But let's keep going. So onto the core. So we have the rectus abdominis, which is the six-pack muscle. It's like a strap that goes between the pelvis and the rib cage in the middle. And the rectus spinae, we're not going to see those. External oblique. Let's do these one at a time because there's a lot going on with the oblique. But the rectus abdominis is pretty easy to see. That's on the center line. That's this shape right here. And you can kind of see a little bit of six-pack going on. This guy's got some pretty good abs. It's not super defined, but you can spot them. So that attaches to the right next to the pubis, right near the pubic symphysis, and then goes up the middle to the rib cage. And what the hell? Let's give this guy the six-pack. He's earned it. He's doing his workouts. Now the oblique, this is a muscle that has a lot going on. So it attaches to the ribs with little slits for each rib, and then it attaches to the iliac crest of the pelvis and to the pubis with a big tendon here. So yeah, all of these ribs and the iliac crest and pubis and some tendons. There's a lot going on. But its attachment to the ribs are going to be here. And if I look at the model, I can see this line. Or actually, it's not that one. It's this line where there's a bunch of little bumps in a line. That is the attachments of the obliques. You can kind of see them a little bit on the other side too. And then at the bottom, there's this bulge right here. And on the other side here, where it attaches to the iliac crest. And this is a muscle that really bulges on somebody who's very, very muscular abs. And it's cool looking. I like to draw it. And then the attachments to the rib cage. Okay, so there's the core muscles, at least the ones that we can see. So back to the torso for the serratus anterior. You don't see much of this muscle. You see this little saw pattern on the side, and it fits in together with the obliques like this. So where one goes in, the other one covers it, going both ways. And that is covered by the lats, latissimus dorsi. And there's a ton going on with this muscle, and I'm not going to get into it because you can't see that much of it. This is that big muscle on the back. But from the front and from the side, you can see the top part of it right here, and that's going to overlap the serratus. So on the model, this bulge here is the lat, and then that line of bumps that we identified earlier is where the serratus interdigitate, I think is the word, with the oblique. And there's the lat. And that's the torso. So we got about 10 minutes left. And I guess that's enough time to do arms. We did legs first last time. They're both pretty complicated. Let's do arms. There's a little bit less going on in the arms, I think, because I don't have to worry about the hips. Okay. Muscles of the arm. Where do I want to start? Well, the bicep is popping out, so. Biceps. We all know the biceps, the ultimate show muscle. Bam. That's that muscle on the front of the arm. And it looks like it attaches to the top of the humerus, but it actually attaches to the scapula. But for our purposes, we can kind of think of it as attaching to the top of the humerus because it attaches like right past to the top of the humerus. And we can see that right here and right here. And there's the tendon where it attaches to the radius. You can spot that. You won't be able to see it all the way to the attachment. It'll be overlapped by other muscles, but you can see where that attachment starts. So I know that's going to get overlapped on the other side. Oops. So you're going to see that there. And you can see it really clearly here. So here's the radius where it attaches. And there we go. And the brachioradius, brachioradialis is different. Got a lot of names. That is largely under the humerus. It starts, largely under the bicep. It starts on the humerus, and it's a little bit further down. And a lot of the times you don't see it. It's like down in here, and it's covered by the bicep most of the time. So it actually would be like right here and like right here, mostly covered. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. So that's right here. And yeah, I don't really see it from this angle. And the tricep is the biggest muscle on the arm. That's the big guy in the back right here. It attaches to the humerus, to the shoulder blade, and then to the olecranon of the ulna. And mostly seeing the front of his arms, but you can see it back here. And if the pole wasn't in the way, I'd be able to see it there. So I'll go ahead and draw that in there. And one thing to note about the arm, and this is true all over the body, is see how it curves wider here and it curves wider here, and these curves are offset. This is like a dynamic symmetry. So it's good for stability, but it's also more visually appealing. So when you're drawing figures, try to look for curves that they curve and recurve like this, and not curves like this. This is unrealistic, and it doesn't look as good visually because the movement just leads together and then stops, and then it starts again, and then it leads together and stop, versus this one where the movement flows. It also, it's called snowmanning because it makes your figures look puffy when you draw muscles like that. Thought that was a good time to get into snowmanning a bit. So there we go. Like 5 minutes left. There's a lot going on in the forearms. So, muscles of the arm. So there's a whole bunch of muscles, and I don't want to get into all of them, but let's try to real quick do a simplification into groups. So you have the brachialis and the extensor carpi radialis longus. They form this bulge and they attach higher up on the humerus than the others. Then you have the extensors, which attach on the thumb side, the lateral side of the arm, and the medial side of the arm, the wrist or the little finger side, is where the flexors attach. And they go mostly on the bottom, the extensors go mostly on the top, and then the anconeus is this little triangle right on the elbow. And unless the person is really lean, you're not going to see definition between these groups, but you can see, or within the groups, but you can see the definition between them. So right here, these are the flexors, and the ulna is the border, and then here are the extensors. Can't see the other groups from that angle. Right here, so we're on the thumb side. So all of this is extensors. Wait. No, that's not right. So this is the extensor carpi radialis longus and the brachioradialis, and these are the flexors. That's what I meant to say. They're on the bottom, on the thumb side. So on the little finger side, we have the flexors, and those attached to the epicondyles of the humerus. And coneus, the little guy in there. And then the extensors on the other side. Note we have that dynamic symmetry again. And then here, I'll start with the flexors. And the brachioradialis and extensor radialis carpi. That one. It's probably a little bit of tricep that you can see through there. Cool. So that's where I'm going to have to call it because we're running out of time, and don't want to start the legs and not finish them. Before I do my pitch and my wrap, let me give you guys a minute to add any thoughts or questions. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate you showing up. We do these classes every Tuesday now. I had to move them to Tuesday this week, and that's going to be the same going forward at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is -8 UTC. If you want to download that book that I was showing you, it's not just anatomy. While I have it open, what the hell? It also has um, observation. Can't see how to draw from observation, color theory, texture, perspective, light, anatomy, and composition. And this is all for free that you can download at the link in the description. There's also a free course to help you make study plans and put the information in the book into practice so you can actually get better, because just reading the book won't help that much. I have a Discord group that is where people are watching this. People on the mic are in the Discord group. We have a really great crew of artists of all skill levels who are actively trying to get better. So if you want, you don't have to do this alone. If you want to study with other people, you can join the group. If you're on YouTube, there is a link to that in the description as well. And if you want, the most effective way I can help you get better at drawing is to sign up for mentorships where we'd work together one-on-one, and I would give you specific instructions, specific assignments to do, and then give you feedback, make sure that you are learning the best information and the learning effectively the best way to get you towards your goals instead of having to search it all out yourself on the internet. Um, yeah, thanks again for coming, and hopefully I'll see you in the next class and on the Discord group. Bye, everybody.